The Brave Foundation is a non-profit trust that exists solely to support people through recovery from physical trauma, and we do this entirely on a donation basis. My own choice to practice what one might say is karma yoga was reinforced when I came across a great Indian saint called Amma, who is also known as the Hugging Saint, who has community, one might say, of over 3,500 non-profit donation-based organizations, of which Brave is now one. Five years ago, the balcony that I was standing on collapsed and I fell with it. And the result was I fractured my pelvis in 5 places and had some spinal injury and faced a fairly long recovery process. And while the modern medical establishment is very well versed at the crisis period of injuries, we no longer nurse people back to health or well-being. So even though one might have top-of-the-range medical aids or even be financially secure, which I was at the time, after the first 2 or 3 months of hospitalization, you really need to find other resources, and they were none available. So I began actually writing a manual for recovery from the earliest period in my hospital bed, even though I couldn't write with hands because I had mosaic breaks in those. But mentally, having realized that there were really no practical resources that helped one through the basic principles of recovery. Lifting the left leg. In recovery, which I had to realize very quickly, is more than the first month or 2 that one might have surgeries or even be in ICUs or need some kind of medical intervention. But the reality is that we face a good 2 years, sometimes even longer, of healing. So on the out breath, tuck the elbows in and come down onto the very So the fundamental principle of Brave is teaching people to be their own best healer, their own best teacher, and to use their body as the instrument. One last one. Just breathe. That's it. You did it.
I think my injury initially was a big shock. Really sort of coming to terms with it in the beginning, to just realize the extent of it and, just what an impact it was going to have. Stage 1 was really understanding what had happened and, how my life would be changed from then onwards. I was coming home one evening after being out, and the motorised gate that's at my property, the remote didn't open it, so what I normally do is just climb over the gate, and what happened was I slipped forward and I fell on my neck, and that sort of really broke the top of my neck vertebra, and that's severed the spinal cord. And the injury was I've got the cervical vertebra, number C1 and 2, that was shattered and had to be replaced by 3 screws. And then my spinal cord was severed completely between C5 and C6. And that results in, from your neck down, as a complete injury, you don't have any sensational movement. A friend of mine who was visiting in hospital mentioned to me that there was a foundation that focused a lot around remedial yoga and breathing techniques, and it was something that you could actually do in hospital. I was on a ventilator breathing machine because I couldn't breathe naturally. So as soon as I was out of intensive care, Robin from Brave came to see me and just really spoke to me about what she does and how she could help on, just the first real stage of recovery is just trying to be able to breathe, because I had a lot of incidents of not being able to breathe once they'd taken me off the breathing machine. With my sister Tracy, who's my primary caregiver, she helps me with the recovery practice, and then William, my carer, he also helps with everything from the practice and the remedial yoga to daily routines.
So from the earliest days, we focus on immersing ourselves in the breath and learning to listen to shifts in that breath, changes in that breath, to intimately reconnect with our breathing patterns. Not to say that we can control breath, we can't. Breath is controlled by something outside of us, and even that is a very profound thing to realize, particularly when you may have lost your breath for a period, and know that to take that next breath is not up to you, but rather is a gift. Up from the right foot to the navel. What most of us don't realize is that there are close to 2 million people a year in this country alone that go through trauma wards and ICUs. Close to 500,000 of those don't make it out of those wards, and the remaining 1.5 million, only a very small percentage are declared having a permanent disability. So close to 1 million people a year are falling through the cracks. What I mean by that is there's no disability grant or financial aid or even organizations that exist to support the average person through a long recovery process. Ryan is also a very special person at Brave, because while he was in ICU and wasn't even really aware of it, his partner at the time found out she was pregnant, and they now have a 1-year-old child, Levi, who's, you might say, one of Brave's miracle babies. He also has a very profound ability to immerse himself in his body and in a state of awareness.
I was going to my girlfriend's house in Stellenbosch, and a drunk pedestrian decided to run across the road at Kayamandi. I hit him on my bike, and I'm told that my left lung collapsed. Vertebrae T5 and 6 were crushed, and as far as I'm aware, oh yes, and my right eye exploded. Luckily they've repaired the right eye. It was quite a challenge sort of learning how to take care of my son as well, because as light as he is, to pick someone up from down there with just one hand and no back to lift both of you up is a mission. But luckily, him and I are starting to understand each other. He's getting older and he's learning how to hold onto my arm. So I only have to do about half the work I used to. Then I couldn't chef anymore because obviously the chair takes up a lot of space, and kitchens are designed so that you need as little space as possible. But what I've been doing with Robin is talking about different ways to get back into the kitchen, because that's what I love. And what I do at the moment is I have standing orders on Tuesdays and Thursdays for bread, which I make. Working with the Brave Foundation, I can achieve a lot more of my personal goals, and the way that they're helping me achieve the personal goals, using the yoga and the breathing, is helping me to recover myself, because there's no point in getting better if you're going to be just better but still have a really bad life. The independence that it breeds inside of you is the main reason I come here.